What is going on? I'm excited to have my man Bryan Krahn here right now, and we're going to dig into how to build muscle and lose fat after 50. And we're going to have a great time here because every time Bryan and you can hear him giggling right now like a little schoolgirl. We have a great time digging into this stuff. Bryan, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing really good, man. Great seeing you.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. So, Bryan, like one of the big things, man, is like you've been in the industry for a long period of time. You've
Mhm.
seen the ebbs and flows, the trends, all of that, and you've stayed in great shape and gotten clients incredible results. So, what changes from an overall training perspective as you're getting a little bit older, say like, after 50?
Great question. Well, it's interesting. Obviously the mechanics don't really change. It's still lifting weights. It's still progressive overload. It's still showing up every day. But probably the biggest thing is I put a lot more focus on just on the consistency, like just getting in there when I say I'm going to get in there, as opposed to just always like killing it. I'm not quite so focused on leaving the gym smashed, that kind of thing. And man, for years I battled with that, even into my 40s. Like if I'd follow a workout and if I left and I felt like, I left I felt feeling too good, like I didn't destroy myself. I'd almost feel guilty.
Yeah.
And many times a workout would end and I would go back and I'd tack on a few sets, a finisher, go push the sled, go, something, a few more sets of curls. But I quit doing all that and just really just focused on my progressions. And yeah, it's paid off. Like I've definitely, I don't know, I'm certainly not the strongest I've ever been, but aesthetically I'm the happiest I've ever been. So
Yeah. And ultimately, that's kind of it, right? And frankly, a lot of the PRs for stuff like that, I mean, those should happen in our 20s and early 30s. Ultimately, a guy who's trained, right, for 10, 15, 20 years hard as an athlete or physique, like they've
yeah.
got more wear and tear in their body than somebody who's been sitting in the office, not really training at 60, and we have to evolve
Well,
with that.
yeah, and well, I'm glad you brought that up. But the other thing is, I used to really manage pain well. Like I would do a lift. Let's say it's an incline barbell press. I love incline barbell press. And if I was doing it, if it felt off before, what I would do is I'd start tweaking things. I'd find that little spot. Okay, this doesn't hurt, and then blast away. But now it's like even if things feel off, if it doesn't feel 100%, I do something else. And invariably, like the next time I try that lift, it'll feel 100%. And I started applying this actually. I mentioned incline barbell press, but I really started applying that with chin ups because like I was always the king of bodyweight chin ups, and
Yeah.
I built a pretty good back from it. I was really strong. And I remember I tested with Charles Poliquin. He would do his weighted chin up tests, and I got up to 90 pounds doing reps. I couldn't believe I was that strong. But no, fuck, I don't even know if I can do one like that. But it's like since around those days, like my elbows would just hurt consistently, and my shoulders would hurt, and just switching to pull downs and learning better mechanics. I haven't had elbow pain in years. And my back development hasn't suffered. So just like it's just like a different mindset more than anything. And rather than trying to avoid, like try to manage pain, I just avoid it at all costs.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's a really good approach. And you start to take note of how does my body feel after
yeah,
this exercise,
yeah,
after that exercise. You mentioned the weighted chin ups. I mean,
yeah,
I'm in the same boat. I've loved to do those. I still will do them on occasion, but
yeah,
working with enough clients, a lot of
yeah,
people suck going overhead,
yeah,
and sometimes those shoulder restrictions lead
yeah,
into the elbow and then they're compensating. And
yeah.
over time, you just got to get smarter with it.
Oh, totally. And again, I'm not saying like that lift is inherently dangerous, but it's especially like weighted dips, weighted chins, and or even heavy benches, and really anything where there's like a considerable amount of weight. You just have to have really really tight form, and you have to. I find, at least for me, I just have to train a lot more scared, if that's proper grammar,
Yeah.
as opposed to just fucking going for it, and just yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough thing because I think
yeah,
naturally in the gym, for many of us, like
yeah,
that's the place where we go for it. We take out stress, we get
yeah,
after it, like we challenge ourselves. So I guess, like, how would you
yeah,
reframe that for yourself mentally? I mean, you're talking about changing different exercises. Is it maybe you have more overload with like different training tempos,
yeah.
manipulating rest period? What does that look like from a technical perspective?
Okay, yeah, yeah, great question. Like, so now what I do is if it's a big fundamental lift, like a chin up or a squat or a deadlift, or we all know what the big fundamental lifts are. I never take those to failure. Like never. Like even if I just don't. I just always leave at least one rep in the hole, and that I mean one really clean rep. Not not like I do. I do it until my form breaks down. Like
Yeah.
when I sense it's not going to get any prettier, I stop. So those lifts for me, I call them skill lifts. So I just treat them like, well, like skills. Like I try to do them as perfect as possible and use the amount of weight that that challenges me, but just doesn't challenge my form, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But I'm still
Yeah.
inherently, I'm still inherently a meathead. I still like to, despite what the literature says, I still like to go to failure when I can. And so for that, I that's where I use isolation exercises. So I'll take at least one set per exercise to failure with like anything with a cable or just any
Yeah.
machines. That's the machine's time to shine. Like is lifts like that. So
I think that's an important piece, right? And
yeah,
this hasn't been too much of an issue. You see it a little bit, but like,
yeah,
remember some of the trends like 10, 15 years ago where
mhm,
everything had to be functional, everything was a barbell. When we go through these
yeah,
cycles, and this one was like really big in the powerlifting side. And I think for a lot of people, it's good to have that foundation, but you have to be able to pivot off of that. You give the incline bench press example.
yeah,
I took like 18 months right into a barbell bench press because I had been doing them consistently. I had an old
yeah,
shoulder injury from football.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, like I did it and it got sore and it stayed sore. And I'm like,
yeah,
maybe my shoulder's just fucked at this point.
yeah,
And which maybe that's still the case. We'll figure it out in the future. But what I did, I really doubled down on the mobility stuff and I got rid of the barbell bench press and, really hammered the dumbbells, got really strong with dumbbells. And about 6 months ago, I'm like, you know what? Let's just play the Smith machine because we have some of that external
yeah,
control. And so I did just like 3 to 4 weeks of just doing like an incline bench press in a Smith machine, something I never would have done at 25,
yeah,
would have been like, that's for pussies, whatever.
yeah.
Right. And now I've been ramping that back up over the last few
Mhm.
months. And yeah, now I'm like incline barbell pressing harder than I have in a long period of time. But I also have a little bit of that fear in terms of like, okay, I'm really deep
Yep.
into stretch right here. Like, let's make sure everything
Mhm.
stays safe. And so I do leave one or two, probably more reps in the tank than I would have at
Mhm.
25, now at 36. And then I
Yeah.
still dumbbells,
Yeah.
damn near close to failure. Anything with cables, anything machine, because we have external stability, it decreases that overall
Mhm.
risk.
Yeah. That's a great. It's funny you bring up the Smith machine like that. As you know, I was in publishing for a long time too, and we used to just I had a list of jokes to make about the Smith machine, and
Yeah.
and now it's probably one of my favorite pieces of equipment, like especially for anything pushing, like it's just fantastic. So you can find that little groove where nothing hurts, get locked in, and you have so much stability. Yeah, like that's my go-to now. If I'm gonna barbell bench or even do tricep extensions, I love the Smith just for that because I can find that particular groove where things feel awesome and
Yeah.
load it accordingly. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I feel like you have to have a lot of awareness in terms of your body positions to kind of find that right one because
Yeah,
I mean I've seen people hop in, they start doing a squat in the Smith machine. It looks incredibly
yeah,
awkward. Joint alignment, all of that stuff is out. So it requires a sweet spot. But once you find it, like it can be great,
yeah,
especially when you're talking purely from like an aesthetic point of view and overloading that muscle
yeah.
and creating as much tension as we can.
Yeah, it's purely I see that as a hypertrophy tool. I wouldn't even consider it like a good strength tool because it is so overly stable. It's the epitome of a bodybuilding machine really because it's all about just for hypertrophy. Like there's I think the whole transfer to sports thing, I think that's a bit overblown how we judge exercises. Oh, that doesn't transfer to the real world, and it's like
Yeah.
okay, like my real world is building big muscles and feeling good. So whatever, I'm not hopping on the
Yeah.
gridiron. But yeah, like it's I wouldn't want to build all my training around something with such rigid stability, but there's plenty of ways to work in natural movements that aren't loaded, to such a degree.
Yeah, I think you hit a really good
Yeah,
point in terms of like the functionality and the sport performance aspect because I mean that's where
yeah,
I came from originally. And
yeah,
like with higher level athletics, like do I think it matters? It does, but there are so many areas as well where it's like most of us just want to look better,
yeah,
build a baseline of strength. Most people aren't strong enough really to benefit from a lot of that stuff anyway. Where
yeah,
if we look at it from a health and longevity
yeah,
and looking great naked perspective, most people need to build more muscle in general. And so what are
yeah.
the tools that are going to do that? And that's going to improve all the health outcomes as well.
Totally, totally. And the other thing is if you can train safer and if you can minimize these nagging injuries that will slowly take you out, I think people sometimes they think about a training injury as like, oh, I blew my pec or I blasted my knee, something catastrophic like that. And those things happen. But the things you have to be mindful of are these nagging injuries. If you get one, everyone always gets shoulder. I've had both for 20 freaking years. And they get a couple, then it's the elbows, and then it's the knees, and then the worst is like lower back.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, eventually, especially once you have kids, you reach this point, you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like I can't even like move around my house.
Yeah.
For what? So why am I doing this to myself? So I think if you can avoid getting into that doom cycle, it'll just make training more fun and obviously a lot more productive.
Yeah. the thing you mentioned with kids is something that stands out for me in my lower body days because I come from a sports background, man. It was like bench, squat, deadlift, power clean, all of that. And,
Yeah.
for years getting really strong in those, with my daughter, she's
Yeah.
5 now, but I remember like, hey,
Yep.
I'm putting my hand down subconsciously right now to help get off the ground because my knee feels like shit
Yeah.
after really pushing the squat too hard. Right. And so like for me, like, that was a big red flag where I'm like, if it feels like this in my 30s, we need to make some
Yeah.
adjustments to the overall training, take the ego out of it a little bit. And frankly, like my legs are in better shape than they have been, really
Well,
in
yeah.
years in terms of muscular development perspective as well. And so sometimes we have to get past the ego of pushing heavy weight, especially as we get older, and like the aesthetics actually improve as a result.
Oh, dude, and I totally had that with my son. So I remember this vividly. He was like, I forget, he was maybe 3 or 4. I don't know. He's always kind of a big kid, kind of chubby. And he's like, pick me up, Dad. And of course, my shoulder was whacked. My lower back was whacked. And granted, wasn't purely for training. I was moving at the time. So I probably picking up something heavy, blew something. But I remember I was just like, I can't, son. And even though I could have, like the house was burning down, I could have grabbed his ass and ran out.
Yeah.
But just the fact that I was avoiding playing with them, basically because I was so sore, I remember I was like, you know what? I have to really take a stronger look at how I do things.
Yeah. I think that's an important point when it comes to like optimizing training. And I think for
Yeah.
people who aren't necessarily training, like what are you missing out in life by not being healthy, by not having the energy, And I mean, we talk about this off the air, but it's like so much of, with kids is modeling different habits and behaviors. And so, if we're always on the couch melting because we're exhausted from work, our body hurts because we haven't taken care of it. Like we're teaching those habits that get passed on. And like, that's something that really hits for me. And it's something that also reinforces poor health and issues that pop up later in life. Right. And so I think for a lot of people listening too, it's like these lessons that you're talking about and teaching right now, like I'm glad I'm adopting them earlier on in my training than I would otherwise, because again, ego can be a great thing with lifting and training. It can also be the enemy. Not to go Ryan Holiday quote heavy, right? But like we have to be able to navigate and adjust as life changes, as we get more wear and tear in the body. Otherwise, then those injuries, those small things that you mentioned, like they become big ones. And pretty soon training's not fun and we lose that consistency. And that's when everything falls apart. I mean, I think that actually ties into like looking at things from a health perspective and like different biomarkers that we look for. We see this all the time in the fitness industry. Both of our coaching, we do look at things like hormone levels and see where people are because we have a lot of guys interested in that. But I think there's a lot of times where, especially right now, people are concerned about the hormone side of things, but they're not taking care of the activity side first that actually creates a foundation for those hormones to be healthy. So what are the things that you look at from a health parameter perspective, like hormone levels, blood lipids for overall health?
Well, that's well, obviously, the first thing you look at is the person in front of you. You just like, what are they presenting to you? Like, are they significantly overweight, or are they weak? Are they are they enjoying their life? I mean, and then obviously from there you just look backwards. Okay, what do you do? What are your habits? What's your day to day like? Like, okay, you go to the gym. Okay, just how often do you go to the gym? And when you go, what do you do? Like, are you always killing yourself, or are you doing a bunch of randomness, or are you jumping from thing to thing? And if it's a body composition thing, obviously diet is a huge part. The point is, like, number one, I just look at the physical form that's in front of me. Then when you go into like biomarkers, everyone talks about testosterone nowadays, testosterone. And yeah, if they, I don't even really, I try to avoid that question until someone is at least mid-30s.
Yeah.
Because if they're, especially if they haven't had children yet, and if they're 35, but if their T is really, really low, first of all, I'll repeat the test. That's the number one thing I do. But if it's still really low, we got to fix lifestyle, man. We got it, because there's just no reason. No, like, I shouldn't say that. There's very little reason that your T should be that low.
Yeah.
For it not to be lifestyle driven, and invariably it's stress. I mean, that's what crashed my stress, or it's terrible diet, or terrible training, or it's rec drugs, or it's a little bit of all the above. And so you want to fix that shit before you get into, okay, you should see an endocrinologist and get medicated, that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a huge thing, man.
But when someone's a little bit older, like they've had their children, and then there's maybe an argument case for, okay, maybe we should fix the testosterone, because that will certainly help us fix the lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that's when the cart can come before the horse, so to speak. But when someone's a little bit younger, man, it's okay. Like it's more like a check engine light when you see testosterone off. Other markers, you mentioned lipids. That's a big one. Blood pressure.
Let's hold on to testosterone for a second, right? Like while we're on that topic. And I have this a lot of times where guys come in, they're like, I'm concerned about testosterone. Maybe they're having issues getting it checked with their doctor, all of this.
Yeah.
And in most cases, in some cases it is testosterone, right? I mean, they've
Yeah.
got, I've got guys who are in like investment banking. They've worked crazy ass hours for 10,
Yeah.
15 years or late 30s. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I understand why things are shot. Other times though, it is a lifestyle thing, right? And,
Yeah.
I had a guy recently who came through and testosterone was in the 600s. And I'm like, here's the issue, right? We got his liver enzymes back and they're 3 to 4 times higher.
Yeah.
So then his SHBG and free testosterone were all over the map. And so
Yeah.
yeah, like I think it's good that there's interest in these things, but in many
Yeah.
cases, there's other things that are negatively impacting your testosterone or the way that you feel, not necessarily your body's ability to produce testosterone.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And like I know plenty of guys just with naturally lower testosterone and they're in great shape. They train hard. They keep their wives happy. Like, they or like that's just how they're dialed in. And that's totally normal. Totally normal. But that's why it's good to get like blood work, lab work, at an earlier age. So you get these reference points. So even if
Yeah.
you just naturally cruise, let's say at 400 nanograms, that's just where your spot is. If all of a sudden that dips really low, then there's something to be concerned about. But if you're not getting at least semi-regular blood panels done, you won't be able to spot that sudden dip. But
Yeah.
even then, I always go, okay, what's causing this change? There's always, well, almost always, there's something in the lifestyle that's driving it. And it's sometimes, there's age-related decline, but more typically it's a lifestyle thing.
Yeah. I mean, USC for a lot of guys, it's again like 30s and 40s, like their weekends are not too dissimilar from what they were in their 20s, right? It's like, they're still having, 5, 10 drinks on a weekend going out and doing all this stuff. I'm like, listen, you can get away with that for a while, but like that check is going to come due. And testosterone's a pretty good indicator a lot of times of that.
Yeah.
But moving past testosterone, what are some of the other things that you're looking for specifically? You had been mentioning, blood pressure is a huge one. A lot of people don't measure that enough, especially if you're on TRT and you have hematocrit. Let's dig into those components a little bit more.
Oh yeah, blood pressure. Yeah, nobody measures it, and I get it. There was always that inconvenience factor, but now there's so many things you can just do at your desk, just sitting at home.
Yeah.
Attach by Bluetooth to your phone. It's pretty. The barrier entry there is pretty much eliminated.
None.
Yeah. And as I say that, I haven't checked mine in probably a month because I moved.
I literally have my blood pressure like thing down here. I'm like, I should probably check that to see where we're at.
It's funny, it's funny. As you were asking that, I was thinking, oh, fuck. I haven't checked mine in so long. But then I came right back to that thing. And I also don't want to know because, like I said, I've been moving and it's probably elevated. Guys, that type of thinking is a huge problem. Oh, fuck. I don't want to know. Because I know I'm not going to like what I see. And it applies like to blood pressure. Like guys just typically will avoid testing things where they're not going to like the answer.
Yeah.
But that's one, it's free. It's such a powerful, it's literally a life and death thing is blood pressure. Much more than testosterone. Fuck.
The silent killer, man. It really is a silent killer. And there's all these T clinics that are out there as well, which is like why, we have individual companies that we really like to work with. But we see these, HRT, TRT places popping up everywhere where it's like injection every 1 or 2 weeks. They don't look at any other blood work really beyond testosterone. And these people walk around with like high hematocrit. So for those who aren't listening, it's like, more or less thicker blood, which typically happens quite a bit with TRT. Let alone, exogenous test use for, performance PED amounts. And so if we have somebody who's got, high blood pressure, they hop on TRT, then they have high hematocrit as well. You got to think about it, right? It's thicker blood at a higher pressure going through. And so if you have other risk factors for cardiovascular risk issues, that's where really bad things can happen. And this isn't meant to scare anybody, but it's like you have to have the overall picture and make sure that the foundational aspects of your health are in a good spot, not just go start blasting TRT because it's trendy.
Yeah, like putting TRT into an unhealthy body is, well, yeah, that's dangerous. I'm not saying it's a death sentence because, again, if someone is really, really low and they just don't even have the energy to get up and move around. Yes, I've heard of these cases. They're out there, but, typically you want to have the lifestyle dialed in first. Just for that reason. And, ways to lower blood pressure too. I mean, it's a lot of they're so inherently healthy, like just drinking more water, doing more cardio, getting better sleep. Those are all things you don't have to jump right to like a medication or even a CPAP. There's so many things that you could do just to lower blood pressure.
Yeah. And those are basic things, right? And, I think you probably edited this first out of anybody back in the day in T Nation, but like success comes from the ruthless execution of the basics. And most times it's like people aren't getting enough sleep. They're not proactively managing stress. They're not hydrated. All of those little things that sound so simple, most people still miss. even with
Yeah.
the really high level clients, right? A lot of times it's like, okay, stress
Yeah.
is knocking you off track because of these different things. And obviously stress gets higher as we typically have shifts in terms of family dynamics. We can be in
Yeah.
an interesting spot where, kids, but we're also like starting to take care of parents a little bit. In addition, like more work stress, right? And all these
Yeah.
different things where we have to keep an eye on these different things and basic habits. Otherwise, that's where issues really pop in. On the cardiovascular side, what do you
Mhm.
pay attention to in terms of like, blood lipids, like HDL, LDL, APOB? Can you dig into that a little bit?
Well, I wish more people got APOA, APOB.
Yeah.
It's getting a lot more popular now, and people are kind of getting away from focusing too much on, especially on HDL. Like HDL is goofy. As soon as someone
Yeah.
goes on any type of hormone replacement, HDL takes a hit. Not saying that it's not irrelevant, but it's just, what can I say? Doctors a hell of a lot smarter than me have told me we really don't know what's going on with HDL. But certainly, like keeping LDL low. I mean, I think the days of people chasing a high LDL are mercifully behind us.
Yeah.
And but what I always tell my clients is that so many of these things that we do and these outcomes that we chase, whether it's a lab report or a body comp thing, like they all point in the same direction. Like if you're doing a lot of cardio, that's great for your lipids. That's great for your resting heart rate. That's
Yeah.
great for your great for your blood pressure. It's great for your body composition. There's very few things where like just doing a lot of good, consistent, steady state cardio doesn't help. So,
Yeah.
so if you could, like, rather than kind of get in the weeds of chasing this lab marker or chasing that, like, just start doing this fundamental activity and it'll probably get you in that right direction.
Yeah. That's one thing you and I do a lot of. Like I see you posting, stories. You're going for a walk. You've got a pack on. I've got a ruck pack. I run on occasion. I'll go, long walk this morning for about an hour, and it's like to me the threshold is not just heart rate, but can actually feel
Yeah.
like the blood pumping into my fingertips.
Yeah.
Like that's when
Yeah.
you're at a pretty good spot. Where how much of a kind of an
Yeah.
anchor habit is that for you? And do you think it's more important now as we get a little bit older in terms of like stress management, but
Yeah.
also like the cardiovascular side of things?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because, like, with your last question, I realized it's almost like I dodged it. You're like, well, what things do you focus on? And I kind of went, and I kind of danced around it like a politician. I'm like, well, I just say you start doing these fundamental tasks that point you that direction. And as I was saying that, I felt swarmy. I'm like, what? I didn't answer the question. But the thing is, as I've gotten older, I've realized that the benefit to these things, they're often go so much far beyond this individual marker that you might be chasing. Now you bring up like fasting cardio. Yeah, I do that to burn calories. I do that to improve my cardiovascular health. But the main thing is I do it for my mental health because if I'm getting up pretty early, probably too early, every day, getting out and doing that, I'm getting into a good structured rhythm. Okay. And that adds like some rhythm to my chaotic day. And so I can be a little bit more at peace. That'll lower my blood pressure and
Yes.
it'll also improve my mental health because all of a sudden I don't feel quite as at siege. I've monitored my blood pressure and my heart rate at times when I've been feeling really under siege at work, like so many things going on and
Yeah.
this payment bounced or this happened. And I've, watched the tech and I'm like, wow, I'm really feeling this right now. And
Yeah.
so, because everything is connected. So like I always like to take things back to these fundamental things that we can do every day that just have a lot of impact in a lot of particular areas. So yeah, like for me, like daily walks, especially outside, huge
Yeah.
difference in terms of mental health between walking on a treadmill inside and being outside. Like that's if
Yeah.
someone is stressed or overwhelmed, that's the number one thing I give them is that.
Yeah. I mean, more small walks if you can make a
Yeah.
longer walk. I mean,
Yeah.
I can tell you without a doubt, like my mental health is significantly better on days when my
Yeah.
step count is higher.
Yeah.
And I have to front load it. Otherwise, what happens, like I notice I'm just, grinding, all day. All of a sudden spend 10 hours. I don't have hardly any movement. And I'm just an
Yeah.
anxious kind of asshole. You know what I mean? And pretty
Yeah.
soon, like, oh, my kid's coming home and now I can't,
Mhm.
budget that time in. So I think a huge component is like front load your day with activity.
Yeah.
And if you're a pro at whatever you do, like you're going to get the main shit done,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's what I've realized.
Yeah, and interesting, like in terms of metrics to chase, like I've gotten away from tech a little bit and chasing much more of stuff that is really, really, really tangible. Like if I I have this route that I walk it's depending on the one I take, it's anywhere from 3 to 4 miles, and I walk the exact same route, and so I just try to do it a little bit faster or carrying a little bit more weight every time. And it's a very concrete metric that I can chase as opposed to, like watching my resting heart rate or just watching it, or worse, the calories burnt, that The wearable tech tells me, yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Although interestingly, my weighted vest adventure had to come to an end because I restrained my freaking Achilles because where I live, it's really hilly. And so anyway,
Let's talk about that for a second, actually, because the weighted vests, the rucks, all of
yeah,
that stuff has gotten
yeah,
more important.
yeah,
And the most valuable thing about that tool is like it'll help you increase your overall calorie expenditure,
yeah,
to an
yeah,
extent, increase that heart rate. But a lot of people overdo it. Like I see people all
yeah,
of a sudden,
yeah.
in my neighborhood, and like 5 people have a rucksack on, they're going for
I know,
walks,
I know.
right? But the thing
Yeah,
is, like, yeah, if you're starting to notice like your calves are excessively tight, lower back, even like thoracic extension
yeah,
because your posture is getting overloaded with
yeah,
it, start slow, like once or twice per week of that in the beginning and let your body adapt because people don't think it's significant.
yeah.
But I mean, if you got
It's
30 pounds on your back, like that's a whole lot of wear and tear repetitively,
yeah.
even if it's
Oh
walking.
man. Yeah, I figured that out the hard way because yeah, my vest, I went, I did one day at like half the weights in it. It felt easy. I'm like, fuck that. All right, I'm in. Loaded it up, full, I think it was 30 pounds. Or is it?
Yeah.
Anyway. And then within 4 or 5 days, I've got this, it feels like my ankle's falling off. I'm a bit of a baby, keep in mind. And I go to my chiropractor. He's like, "Oh, I'll put my acupuncture needles in it." And just he did one, and I started like that hurt worse than the
Oh,
fucking injury. I'm like, "I'm good. I'm good. I'll get through
yeah.
this." So,
I'll navigate this.
but yeah, no, it's a great tool. I saw because we're in the fitness industries. You'll appreciate this. There's this fit pro. There's this fit pro out there, and he saw I was wearing a weighted vest. And he's like, "That's so dumb." He goes, "Why don't you just carry dumbbells? Because then you can train your forearms at the same time." And I'm
I
like,
don't want more
"Okay."
tendonitis, dumbass.
And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that, man. I'll go walking, 4 miles through my neighborhood carrying my freaking dumbbells just so I can work on my extensors and flexors, like just for you.
Exactly. Exactly. Ah,
Yeah,
man, I'm sure
yeah,
he had a great weekend certification.
yeah. I know. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, man. So, I mean, and kind of building
Yeah,
off of this right here, like we've kind of talked about the training side, on the health side, like let's talk about how your nutrition has pivoted. Before we really
yeah,
jumped on and actually hit record, I mean, tell like a little bit more
yeah,
about like your current like approach, like where you're at like body composition wise, and let's weave in like the
mhm.
nutrition both with TRT and then not on TRT, and kind of how you'd
Yeah, yeah,
approach things after 50.
yeah. It really has. That's probably evolved as much as my training the last few years because like when I was much younger, I was very much like a tip. I ate like a body. Well, I shouldn't say like a bodybuilder because bodybuilders used to be very low fat diets. Like when I was
Yeah,
coming up, but I ate kind of like a smart bodybuilder. So I had plenty of fats, plenty of fats to support hormones and all this. And I've always kind of struggled with my body composition. I mean, I look fine, but I was always like, for me to be visibly lean was a lot of work. The last few years, especially as like step counts have gotten more in vogue and generated a lot of activity, I've incorporated that, and I've also really lowered my fats. Like, kind of almost become that guy from the '80s who would like, avoid anything with a little bit of fat in it. So I
yeah,
went that route. very rarely, eating beef now maybe once or twice a week, and really lean cuts, and just maybe one egg yolk a day. It adds up to maybe like 30 grams plus, whatever EFAs I add. So not super low, but pretty low. And as a result, I've just been found it so easy to stay lean
yeah.
and just granted easy, I'm still doing all this movement, but it hasn't felt like I don't feel hungry, I don't feel deprived at all. And I realized I was just eating too many calories from fat, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. And like, I've been very personally interested in this because I talked about a lot of this to you before I hopped on
Yeah,
TRT,
yeah,
but like kind of looking at where my blood work has been, so on and so forth. And
yeah,
for me, like I've always had naturally kind of a higher LDL and even a slightly
yeah,
higher APOB. We think there's probably a genetic
yeah,
component there.
probably.
And, for a lot of years, I was pretty low carb. I mean,
Yeah,
I was
oh
using
yeah,
a lot of fasting. I was staying shredded for a long time, man. Right. And it's
yeah,
like now, one, I want to actually add a little bit more lean muscle. Adding carbs has
yeah,
definitely supported that. But now, actually, with TRT, my need for more fat really it's capped out for most people around 20 to 25% where the actual benefits
yeah,
come from
yeah,
a hormone development perspective. For some people, going above that also leads to issues with things like APOB and,
yeah,
yeah, cholesterol. Not saying everybody, but there's kind of a unique subset where some people are very sensitive to it. And I think with the popularity of like carnivore and the high fat diets, people are still been a little bit reckless with it and
oh yeah.
still dramatically overconsume calories and can't lose.
Totally, totally. I think, and with the carnivore trend of thinking that LDL doesn't matter at all, I think that's, again, I'm glad that's kind of fallen off the wayside.
Yeah,
But yeah, I know some people flourish on a higher fat diet, and there's definitely an individual component to all this.
Totally.
Yeah, and but like for me at least, for me like going as low as I can, realistically, not being super stupid with avoiding fats, but you know, typically yeah, under 30 grams a day plus a little bit that I add here and there. Basically, just avoiding it as much as I can, and whatever creeps in through naturally occurring sources, like that's fine. That's
Yeah.
been a real game changer to me because it's allowed me to eat a lot more carbs, and just yeah, stay leaner.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to do it, and it's not
Yeah.
like you're depriving yourself. I mean, if you're doing something with your
Mhm.
son, like you can still have a dessert, or when we see each other at Silverback Summit, like
Yeah.
we can sit down, have a steak or whatever, and hang out. So it doesn't mean over deprivation, but I
Yeah.
think what needs to happen, we have to be more cognizant of like how these things affect
Yeah.
us, and even though n equals one, I think where a lot of people get stuck, and you probably see this
Mm.
with your clients as well, but maybe they've gotten leaner, they've made some
Mm.
shift because they went with a higher fat, lower carb, lower calorie approach, lost weight, but now they want to
Yeah.
continue to evolve, and that no longer serves them.
Yeah, yeah, and just interesting you bring that up because you mentioned like I see you at summits and I see you around, and yeah, you know, I've, we've had our share of meals and none of us were counting calories, but I think that's it. That's kind of like the way I approach life now. To be honest, is that when I'm at home and when I like in my normal groove, which is probably 49 or 50 weeks out of the year, a low fat diet. I rarely eat desserts. I get my cardio in. I train. I get to bed. I don't really drink. And then though, when I travel or when it's a special occasion, I just do whatever I want. Do whatever I want. I just yeah, I'll eat what I want. I'll do what I want. And that for me is probably been a really big seismic change as opposed to trying to fit everything in. You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to being that guy is like, well, I'll have a little bit, got to live a little. I'll include this much alcohol. I'll include this much kind of indulgence that I don't really want anyway.
Yeah.
And after a while, you don't really miss it. So
Yeah.
so now if my kid wants ice cream, I'll get one, but it's very, very rare as opposed to making sure I have these indulgences. I don't know if that's coming across properly, but it's just a different way of looking at things.
No, I mean, I think what it is, it
Yeah.
sounds like there's like a maturity aspect to it, and it's just kind of a changing of
Yeah.
standards. And I think a classic example here is, let's say
Yeah.
somebody knows that they drink too much, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to set this drink limit at like five. And that might
Yeah.
work for a little while, but like sometimes what you're better off doing is just make a hard decision because that eliminates all these other decisions across the board. And
Yeah.
I actually think about this with food quite a bit where
Yeah.
like I like to cook, I like to entertain, I love good food.
Yeah.
But really what we focus on, like my wife and I both operate the same way where it's like, breakfast, lunch, and a snack are basically on
Same.
autopilot. We don't think
Yeah.
about it, right? At dinner,
Yeah.
if we want to have some flexibility, if we want to order food, if we want to go out, if we want to,
Mm.
just do whatever, like cool. We've kicked ass like 80% of the day. And then this last meal, I mean, we're still within boundaries, but now we have more freedom and flexibility where I think a lot of people kind of get stuck with the idea of like chasing entertainment with food and with drinks and all this. And like, that's the reason they have these health issues in the first place versus like, how
Yeah.
can I eliminate decisions, be better at like this 80-20 approach?
Yeah.
And gradually you start to make those overall improvements with your health and your choices. And that's where you find that buffer of like, yeah, I can go out on a trip and I can eat at restaurants 3 or 4 days a week and drink and frankly just party a little bit, but I can
Yeah.
also bounce right back and my health isn't impacted because I've gotten my baseline health foundation to a really high
Yeah.
level. You know, we're coming
You
up on the
said it.
holidays. Go ahead.
Yeah, but no, but you said it right there, like 80-20. And I think the mistake that I used to make, and probably a lot of other people make, is I saw 80-20 as, okay, here's my 7-day week. Okay, how can I fit it? How do I apply 80-20? And whereas now it's like 80-20 is much more on from a year perspective. Like that 20% will be the last 2 weeks of the year. Christmas, we're all traveling, seeing family. Who the hell's tracking? It'll be that
Totally.
it'll be those couple days where I go to this summit or I go or this weekend away with my wife, that kind of thing. And then along with that, many weeks where it's very clean and very consistent and very few indulgences. Like, so it's kind of like an 80-20 from a big picture perspective, as opposed to like, I know people who try to like every day fit in some, oh, here I fit in my drink and here I fit in my this much chocolate.
Exhausting.
Yeah, like, man, go without.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah.
And frankly, like that's like an approach I've often taken to fat loss where like I always stay lean, I always stay healthy, but I always like to say like with what we call striking distance, right?
Yeah.
Meaning like, so if I need to go like balls out for like 4 to 6 weeks on a diet, I can like just nuke everything out because you know what? It's not that long.
Yeah.
And I also on the backside of that, I just kind of go back into my regular routine on the backside of it. And like I have enough of that stuff where I feel like there's some balance. The issue is for a lot of people is they never get lean enough to ever find that sustainability and what we call looking
Mm,
great naked without leaving the gym. And so for the
yeah.
vast majority of people, it's like you just got to do everything you can to get lean and get healthy first. And then if you want
Yeah.
sustainability, great, now your body can actually handle it. But if you're 20% body fat and like you're upset that you
Yeah.
can't, have a drink on the weekend or whatever, it's like,
Mm,
well, it's because your body's not efficient at it yet and you're just reverting back into old habits and patterns. And so in some cases, like, yeah, we have to have this aggressive 80-20 approach. We're like, okay, we're not 80-20 right now. We're 100% in, but on the
yeah. Yeah.
backside of the year, because we've gotten there, now we can actually sustain
Yeah.
80-20. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Totally. Totally. And you're right. Like the body is very, I say it's the body, but it's really the mind. It is
Yeah,
very forgiving once you get to that goal. You get there
totally.
and you camp out there a bit, like not like immediately after jump back into your old habits. Like you
Used
camp
to do
out
that.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I used to do that too. Yeah. Gained 40 pounds in 2 days. Yeah, yeah. But you finally get there and it'll always take longer than you think, especially that first time you lose all the fat. And then try to hang out there for as long as you can. And then I'm not saying your physiology changes, but certainly your mentality will change. And
Yeah.
and then you can have these discretions where, take a few days off to eat whatever, or travel or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's an important perspective. The body's very forgiving once you get it to that lean
Yeah.
level. A lot of times I'll talk to guys about this. I'm like, you remember when you were like 22, 23, and you were very
Mm.
active and your body could get away with just about everything? A part of
Yeah.
that is youth, but a
Yeah.
piece of that is also like you were leaner. You probably had better testosterone to cortisol ratios. You had better insulin sensitivity, right?
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is get your body back to that lean state. And it doesn't mean you get to
Mhm.
act like you're a 20-year-old and,
No.
go drink and hit a PR the next morning and then eat pizza and be okay. But it
Yeah.
does mean that like once you get your body leaner and more effective
Mhm.
or efficient,
Yeah.
it can break down and use that food.
Yeah.
One way I always like break this down is, you know, everyone who can probably relate to like sitting down and having a meal with somebody who's in great shape and you're like, oh my God, how can they eat all of that and still look
Yeah.
like that? It's because the body becomes more efficient and breaks it all down. And ultimately that's
Yeah.
how you get that efficiency to fit in these other things within reason as much as you want.
Well, yeah, and if someone's naturally, or not naturally, consistently, that's a better word, consistently lean, if you look at their diet, they're probably eating right around their maintenance, for the most part. And so then when they have this day where they go out, they see all their friends, they eat a bunch of food, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, you eat so much." That's like this calorie spike. That's, very much an aberration. And if anything, those little things are, if anything, they stimulate the metabolism a little, not much, but like they just don't
Yeah.
have it's not like you're compounding a high calorie meal on top of weeks of high calorie meals. That's like the beauty of getting lean that one time and then holding it, is you learn to like live around that maintenance point.
Totally. It's like, to an extent, it's almost like building a career and going all in, say, like in your 20s, where like you build up financial
Yeah.
flexibility, financial freedom. Now you have
Yeah.
maybe this asset or these assets in terms of a business. And now you
Yeah.
can do things more for passion. You can pull off in a different way. It's like the stack in the deck.
Yeah.
I know we're talking like building muscle, losing fat after 50, but for those of you who are not
Yeah.
50, it's do as much hard work in terms of building a great
Yeah.
body early on. And then you can have
Yeah.
so much freedom and flexibility later on where I'm in a unique position too, like later 30s, I can see a big difference between those who have taken care of themselves. Like I've got
Mhm.
friends who look 50. I got some who look 25,
Yeah.
It's just a really
Yeah.
interesting thing.
Actually,
So
here's one
yeah,
thing
go
I want
ahead.
to, because you mentioned 50 again. I know you're just making fun of my age, and it's I'm
Yeah,
very
you'll
sensitive
fart.
to
Just
that.
kidding.
50 fucking two. But one thing I will say, when I work with somebody, like 90% of new clients, no matter what age they come, they need to lose some fat. I mean, that's kind of the typical new client is someone, they got to get their body fat down. But when someone is younger, that's always my first thing is okay, we got to get your body fat down. Got to get your body fat down. But I find that I want to go into the reasons why, that like more insulin sensitive, you just, create a longer runway. So when you go about building muscle, you stay
Yeah.
leaner longer, all these reasons, all good reasons. But when someone is older, especially if they're over 50, I do take a slightly different approach. It's that, yeah, I want to get their body fat down for all those same reasons. But if they don't have a good base of muscle, if they're not strong, that becomes priority number one, because we are just running out of time.
Yeah.
It's like you're 50s already, like you're 60s, you want to start putting on muscle. Like, I'm sorry, shit does slow down. Despite what the internet says, we have to get your strength up. Now, of course, you can lose fat and build muscle at the same time. It's more like just of a mental focus. Because I see a lot online, people like, oh, I got to get abs after 50. I got to get abs after 50. And I'm like, yeah, it's a great goal, but are you strong?
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to keep you out of the freaking nursing home. Is your that muscular base. Like if you're strong already, like you used to work out a lot, so you got this nice, sure, let's get the fat down. Let's get you let's get you that six pack. But if you don't have
Yeah.
that, like that's got to be your focus.
And I think it's a really important thing as well because, yeah, I mean, sarcopenia, age related muscle loss definitely
Yeah.
increases, especially as we get up there. And when it comes to diets, I mean, this ties into a little bit of what we talked about nutritionally. Carbohydrates, as the example, are protein sparing. They prevent the breakdown
Yeah.
of muscle tissue. And so I see a lot of people come through in their 40s and their 50s have been following some of these keto and carnivore diets. And maybe they had, let's say, for example, somebody had 60 pounds they had to lose. They followed these diets, they lost the first 40. The issue for a lot of them is, especially if they weren't training hard correctly, which most people don't, they train to burn calories, is they've also lost a decent amount of that muscle tissue already. And so metabolic rate is a little bit slower. They got this fear of carbohydrates. And so mentally, there has to be this paradigm shift of like, okay, well, we need to be able to lose body fat and we want to be able to build some muscle. We have to change what you're doing from a nutrition perspective. And now and then the training side has to evolve with it as well. And that can be something difficult to understand or frankly I see this again, not to make this all about low carbs, but like people get this attachment to losing weight fast with low carbs because they lose, water weight, and it can be very effective. I'm not saying there's anything bad with it, but making that shift and that pivot people run into a lot of issues. And I think what we're seeing now is, even if people are losing the weight, they're losing a lot of lean tissue because these other parameters aren't really focused. And from a health and longevity perspective, that's a big issue.
Yeah. I mean, I was such a low carb guy.
Yeah.
I always I sometimes get embarrassed when I think back about like my history because I was such a low carb guy and I had all these scientific reasons that really didn't have scientific underpinnings, but I wasn't smart enough at the time to realize that. But I'm just carb intolerant. I remember telling myself that, and I wasn't. But certainly, like there's seductive low carb diets, because you lose all this water weight right away. Your face gets leaner.
You get the jawline,
Oh yeah, people notice, and it's easy to follow because all you have to do is just not eat anything with carbs. So it's very kind of black and white. It's simple to follow. I mean, not easy, but very simple. I can't eat that. It's got a carb in it. Shit, all of a sudden you're losing all this weight, but terrible for building muscle. Terrible. The people who do great on them and build muscle are usually on a shit ton of gear, which that solves a lot of problems.
It really does. Yeah. And let's kind of dig into that too, right? It's like, fuck it, we're going, right?
Balls. Yeah, we're going. Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, I mean, listen, I lost probably a decent amount of like lean muscle capability by staying very lean through my 20s and early 30s, which, part of it was like professionally, like, the look I was kind of going for and doing photo shoots and staying lean, all of that. But I mean, listen, just because something works for fat loss or it works to maybe get you jump started with your transformation, it doesn't mean it's going to be optimal for what that next phase is. And so there's a natural attachment to things that have worked really well for us because we feel the emotional change. What happens when we are leaner, when we're feeling better, we get these compliments. But the issue for a lot of people is they extrapolate it over into like other goals and becomes problematic. And so we know that having more carbohydrates is going to lead to, better muscle retention, right? Because we prevent the breakdown of that tissue. It's going to lead to better training because it's a primary fuel for high velocity or high tension muscular contractions. And so, we got to control for calories. We got to get leaner. But once we get to that point of leanness, increasing that carb intake can be better from a lipid profile in many people. And build that lean tissue.
And of all the things that we throw around, like all these little phrases that, carbs are protein sparing or just whatever it is, that is one that is like kind of the power of carbs. Like it's just really underappreciated, I find. Well, certainly was by me. So I was always a protein guy and, and obviously watch calories, but carbs was always the first thing to go, and now it's, as I got older, fall back into the 80s approach, which is, lower the fats first. And that seems to be just a lot better. But to the point now that I think that almost like some of these protein intakes you see are frankly, they're excessive. Now, there's no real harm in it being excessive, except that you could just easily replace that with carbs and probably get as good or better result.
That's been an interesting thing too. I used to always hammer the protein more and more and more. And I'm like, man, I can handle 400 plus grams of carbs. Like I'm, just plowing through it and I feel better. Actually, I look better aesthetically, right? I'm full. Vascularity is actually better, which is wild to think about because, classic example would be, water manipulation for a cut, stuff like that. You expect to see that vascularity, but on a regular day, like I look better with a higher carb intake for sure.
Yeah, like that's you just nailed it right there because like it's once you get into these when you're that kind of that isocaloric kind of place, you get 200 grams of carbs, 200 grams of protein. You're it's everything. It works, everything's fine. But it's if you have to push one of those, if you got say you're sitting at 200 grams of carbs, 200 grams of protein, and now I'm going to double one of those. Okay, you double the carbs, you'll perform great. You'll probably look better, especially if you're leaner already and you're training a lot. Double the protein, I wouldn't want to be around you.
Yeah. Oof.
You need a hazmat suit around your bathroom, but you just wouldn't feel good. Like your sweat would smell like battery acid, and so yeah, it's just interesting. I think sometimes that's the problem is that we're looking at things just kind of like at these lower levels. Like I just 1,800 calories, 200 grams of protein, 200 grams of carbs. Yeah, okay, but what happens when you start pushing things? Getting your
Yeah.
activity up, your calories up. Then what are the outcomes?
Exactly. The higher your training intensity, the more volume you do, the more active you are overall, the greater the need or demand for carbohydrates. If you're not getting
Yeah,
them from somewhere, you are going to break down more lean muscle tissue in order to
yeah,
get that
yeah,
fuel that you need. It's just the way that it is. And
yeah,
that's where a lot of people, combine high
yeah.
intensity training, all this stuff, and then they're very low on the carb side, which again, not optimal, not ideal, especially if you might have problems in terms of
Mm,
actually breaking down those fats and using them appropriately when it comes to your
yeah.
lipid profile and the long term health things that start to matter more as we get older. Brian, let me hit you with some rapid fire questions here, and let's see where they go. You ready?
All right. Oh, yeah, I'm ready, man.
All right. So, what are some of your favorite exercises that you always keep in the rotation at this point?
I have not done a day without doing cable face pulls since forever, and just purely because they make me feel so good. I do that at the beginning of my workout, with usually added an external rotation and just warms up my shoulders. I'm not saying it's building, it's not building a bunch of muscle back there, but it just seems to wake up my upper back, and it's my go-to thing at the start of a workout. Well, even if it's lower body, I'll do a couple sets of face pulls. So I know, probably not the sexiest answer, but that's definitely a go-to. But
No,
if I want to give a better answer, I'll never do a leg day without a single leg movement. I love split squats. I think that's all variations of them. I think it's just a fantastic. It's a perfect exercise.
I did them yesterday. Absolutely love them. A barbell split squat. I think people love the Bulgarian split squat, but like the barbell split squat lets you actually get a little bit more loading in many cases. Slightly different
Yeah,
from a stability component, but man, like I don't do a whole lot of barbell back squat stuff like that anymore. But like I'll do a
yeah,
barbell split squat for my
yeah.
single leg, and that kind of bridges the gap for me for
Oh,
sure.
and if you travel a lot, it's so good for the loosening up the hips and protecting the lower back. It's just perfect
Yeah, no
exercise.
doubt.
Yeah.
All right, so most overrated exercise for guys over 50 and upper body and then lower body.
Most overrated would be probably crunches.
Middle of body.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, fuck, I missed that one. Well, certainly, probably would be a barbell bench press. Just it's a fine exercise, but odds are if someone's over 50, their shoulders are probably a little jacked up. Their form's probably not that great. Like they probably don't know how to bench with jacked shoulders. It's a
Yeah.
very it's a very specific technique to do that. Much better off doing a cable or a dumbbell or a machine or freaking anything but that.
Push up.
Uh,
Yeah.
a push up, yes, yeah, absolutely. Most overrated lower body. Good question. Do people? I don't see a lot of lower body training where I go. That's a well for someone who's over 50, probably a poorly performed a back squat. Actually, not that I see it that often, but
Yeah.
if you can't perform a back squat well, barbell back squat, then just do a split squat. And
There's so many options,
yeah,
like so many different ways to hit the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. In terms of cardiovascular health, any supplements you would recommend that guys get on a regular basis after 50?
A supplement for cardio. Well, certainly fish oil. Fish oil. I was going to give you a cheeky answer like, yeah, do your cardio, but fish oil is undeniable well, certainly for lipid management, directly cardiovascular health, probably fish oil again. Um, and certainly if you take a statin, CoQ10. Yeah, I'm not. I always say I'm not a big supplement guy, and I tell this to all my clients. I'm not a big supplement guy. Then you look at my cupboard, and it's nothing but fucking supplements. So I don't really. I'm a bit of a contradiction, but
No, same here, honestly. Like, I'm
yeah,
always experimenting and trying different things. Now
yeah,
that I've gotten more into my blood
yeah,
work, I'm like, how does this affect this particular variable? And I think that's an interesting perspective.
yeah,
From a training performance perspective, any
yeah.
one supplement you recommend as a staple?
Oh, definitely creatine. Creatine is it's been really cool just because I can remember when that was big in 97, 96, and people were talking like, oh, it's a steroid. It's this powerful, what was the word? Ergogenic. It's this powerful ergogenic aid. And they're talking about banning it from the Olympics and all this stuff. And now it's 30 years later. And when you hear about creatine, it's just like, yeah, I'm going from 10 to 20 grams for my brain health. I'm like, and my Alzheimer's. So I got my mom taking it and I'm just like, holy shit. Like at one time
That
they're
changed.
trying to drug test for it at one time. And now you're like, oh, I got to give it to my grandma. So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing in that respect. So that's, The only problem with creatine is that it's like, it's like that one girlfriend. I don't want to go there, but it's just like it spoils you for the rest of your life. That you never quite replace that. It's so good, and there's no downsides. And
Yeah,
there's
great
there's
supplement,
nothing.
no doubt.
Yeah, nothing like it.
Best piece of advice you would give yourself at 30 that you wish you had implemented now at 52?
Just to understand that it is time accelerates. When you're 30, you will go to sleep and wake up and be 52, and you'll still kind of feel like you're the 30-year-old guy still, and you'll go to the gym and think you're the 30-year-old guy and have the 30-year-old guy kind of priorities perhaps, but time has moved on. So just like enjoy it every day. But yeah. And from a more practical standpoint, start training like you're 50 when you're 30. That is,
Yes.
that's start, because you might think that, oh, then I won't get as big or I won't get as strong or as jacked. No, once you're 50, you'll be every bit as big, probably bigger, maybe not quite as strong, but certainly more mobile, and you'll feel much better.
Love it.
So, yeah.
What's one book or resource every man over 50 should check out?
Every man over 50. One book or resource. Man, I don't know. Fuck, you got me there. Either the Bible or How to Win Friends and Influence People. So,
hey, those are great, right? Moral standards and the ability to communicate. Those are fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, Bryan, before I lose you, man,
Yeah.
where can we learn more about you? Tell us about your books, where we can follow you up on social media.
I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram. I have the same follower account for the last 30 years. Eric's supposed to help me with that, but it's at Bryan Krahn. I'm there. I'm gonna be at the Silverback Summit. Eric will be there too, and that's in Orlando. In 6 weeks, and people much smarter than me talking about all these subjects, and it's a really good event. Yeah.
Likewise, it's one of the events that we go to learn from each and every single year. So definitely a great one. Bryan, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Great. Thanks.